Before we get into the heart of this theory, here's what this video is actually doing. This isn't just another Fallout lore breakdown. This is an attempt to solve the missing center of Cooper Howard's story in Fallout. The long, unexplained stretch between the man he was before the bombs and the ghoul he becomes afterward. Specifically, we're examining whether Coop didn't simply become a ghoul through random radiation exposure, but instead made a deliberate, devastating choice to sacrifice his humanity in exchange for time. Time to keep searching for his wife Barb and his daughter Janey. If that choice was intentional, it reframes his entire arc, his cruelty, his detachment, and even his survival as something far more tragic and meaningful than the show ever states out loud. And here's the key claim up front.
How long has this asshole been moldering in the ground?
How do we know he's not feral?
If Cooper Howard did not choose to become a ghoul, then his character arc quietly collapses into randomness. The theory isn't just interesting, it may be necessary. From the moment Fallout introduces Cooper Howard in flashbacks, it is clear the show is doing something unusual. This isn't a quick pre-war montage meant to contrast before and after. Coop's human life is given emotional weight. He isn't just a symbol of a lost world. He's a husband, a father, a man with unfinished business. The show lingers on that because it wants you to remember who he was before he became the ghoul. And that matters because when we meet him in the wasteland centuries later, he isn't just mutated, he's emotionally hollowed out. Something has been burned away. The obvious explanation is radiation. Fallout is full of ghouls created by environmental exposure. It's easy, it's familiar, and it's also dramatically lazy in this case. Season 2 makes a very specific choice. It tells us that Coop survives for a long time before he becomes a ghoul. He searches for Barb and Janey. He follows rumors. He moves through the wasteland, not as a monster, but as a man clinging to hope. This matters because ghoulification in Fallout usually happens either immediately or gradually through prolonged exposure, but the show never shows that transition. Instead, it skips it. That missing transformation is the narrative gap fans are responding to. And gaps like that don't exist by accident. The theory suggests that after years, possibly decades of searching, Cooper Howard reaches a breaking point. His body starts to fail. He ages. He realizes that no matter how determined he is, biology will eventually end the search. And in a world where radiation has rewritten the rules of mortality, Coop is faced with a horrifying possibility. He can either die human or live long enough to keep looking at a terrible cost.
You want to know what I was like before the war? I was just like you.
This is where intentional ghoulification enters the conversation. Fallout lore has never treated ghoulification as a single, fixed process. While accidental radiation exposure is the most common cause, it is not the only one. Across the franchise, we've seen ghouls created through experimental conditions, chemical exposure, and controlled radiation environments. The universe has always left the door open for ghoulification to be something that can be engineered rather than merely suffered. That's why fans frequently point to Fallout 76, not because it proves anything about the show, but because it establishes precedent. Fallout 76 demonstrates that the setting allows for voluntary interaction with radiation and chemical systems that radically alter the human body. The show doesn't need to copy those mechanics directly. It only needs the conceptual permission, and Fallout already grants it, so the question becomes less, could Coop do this? And more, would he? Season 2 quietly answers that by showing us who Cooper Howard is at his core. He is not a man who accepts loss easily. He doesn't move on. He doesn't find closure. He obsesses. He searches. That's not the mindset of someone who would simply accept death when time starts to run out. It's the mindset of someone who would consider the unthinkable if it meant keeping hope alive. This is why the idea resonates so strongly with viewers. It reframes ghoulification from a curse into a sacrifice. Coop doesn't become a ghoul because the wasteland breaks him. He becomes one because he refuses to stop. That interpretation also helps explain something crucial about the ghoul we meet later: his emotional numbness. If Cooper Howard chose ghoulification knowingly, then the man we see afterward isn't just traumatized by time, he's living with the consequences of a choice he can never undo. Every century that passes validates the decision and punishes it at the same time. He's alive because of love. But the longer he survives, the more distant that love becomes. Some fans point to the ghoul's fragmented memories as evidence of intentional transformation. That's where we need to be precise. Memory loss in Fallout is not unique to deliberate ghoulification. Long-lived ghouls, trauma survivors, chem users, and radiation victims all experience cognitive decay over time. So memory damage doesn't prove intent, but it doesn't contradict it either. What it does is support the idea that the transformation came at a real psychological cost, and that cost matters. If ghoulification were purely accidental, then Coop's suffering is meaningless. Tragic, yes, but random. The show, however, keeps returning to themes of choice, sacrifice, and consequence. Vault dwellers choose safety over freedom. Wastelanders choose violence over vulnerability. Power is always gained by giving something up. Coop's story fits that pattern too cleanly to ignore. The alternative explanation that he simply absorbed too much radiation over time is perfectly plausible in-universe. Many ghouls are created that way, but narratively, it's weak. It strips Coop's arc of agency. It turns his transformation into environmental background noise rather than a defining moment. For a character the show invests this much emotional energy into, that explanation feels insufficient. The Season 2 finale reinforces this interpretation in a subtle but devastating way. When Coop finally finds the postcard from Barb, proof that she and Janey may have survived cryogenic storage and escaped toward Colorado, the show doesn't play it as a twist. It plays it as a reckoning. After 200 years of uncertainty, he finally gets confirmation that the search was never pointless. If Coop chose to become a ghoul, that moment retroactively justifies everything. The centuries of decay, the loss of self, the moral corrosion. The decision worked. He stayed alive long enough to find the truth. That's not random tragedy. That's narrative closure. It also aligns perfectly with how Walton Goggins has spoken about the character. In interviews, Goggins emphasizes that Coop's arc is about meaning, about clinging to purpose in a world that has erased it. The ghoul isn't motivated by greed or chaos. He's motivated by something quieter and more dangerous: unresolved love. This interpretation transforms the ghoul from a cool, violent anti-hero into something far more unsettling. He isn't just a survivor of the apocalypse. He's a man who decided survival was worth becoming unrecognizable. Every bounty he takes, every cruel choice he makes exists downstream from that one moment where he chose time over humanity. And that's why this theory won't go away. It doesn't just explain lore, it completes the character. Whether the show ever confirms it outright almost doesn't matter. The idea already functions as the emotional glue holding Coop's timeline together. Without it, there's a hole where his most important decision should be. With it, everything clicks: the bitterness, the endurance, the refusal to die, and the quiet devastation when hope finally resurfaces. Fallout has always been about what people are willing to become when the world ends. Cooper Howard may be the clearest expression of that idea the show has given us. Not because he survived, but because he chose how. And if that choice was real, then the ghoul isn't just one of Fallout's most compelling characters. He's its darkest one.